It's the final countdown, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 6 of the Outside the Box podcast on Xpress Radio Studios. We're here for our end of season awards after a scintillating day of action in the final game week of the Premier League season, and we're here to discuss that. We're looking forward to a bumper show here. We'll give you our manager of the season, our team of the season, our player of the season, and much, much more. James, how are you feeling after the season's drawn to a close in the Premier League?
As a Wolves fan, I'm happy to see the end, to be honest, but it's been a really good season at the top of the league especially. I think it's been exciting, and yeah, I think this could be one of our best podcasts yet. Lots to discuss, lots to get through, lots of debate to be had, I think. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that. So first of all, we're going to round up the Premier League, because that is what we were here for at the end of the day, as our end of the season awards. First game, we'll talk about the 4 consecutive Premier League champions, Manchester City, who secured that 4th consecutive PL title on Sunday with a 3-1 win against West Ham. They didn't really give Arsenal any hope after second minutes. Phil Foden, screamer.
Yeah,
quite simply put. Well, you had 2 goals in that game for Foden. You had a goal for Rodri with another clincher. He seems to come up with a lot of goals for them. I was sort of thinking this. You have De Bruyne and you have Haaland, but how important are those two to Man City's success this season and season?
As in Haaland and De Bruyne,
or as in Rodri and Foden.
Well, yeah, I think I was going to go on to speak about Rodri and Foden a bit later on in our team this season, but yeah, they've been so important, honestly. De Bruyne's been out a lot of the season with injury, so I think Foden this season I know he's been a good player for like years now, but this feels like the first season where he's really stepped up and become the star man in many ways. Maybe not the only star man in City, but you know, he's won player of the season, hasn't he? Yeah. And Rodri, 50 games unbeaten with Rodri in the team, Man City are. So It just shows he's just an absolute giant for them. But yeah, De Bruyne and Haaland came up good against Spurs, and this week against West Ham it was Foden.
It was the other two, yeah. In terms of, that's 4 Premier League titles in a row for City, and speaking as a Manchester United fan, of course I would love to tell you, look at all the charges that are against you and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you have to sort of look at them and say that is sporting excellence right there. And in terms of looking forward, I mean, Pep, you seen him speak after the game and how he's closer to leaving than he is to staying, sort of suggesting that he won't stay another 7 years. Thank goodness from a Manchester United perspective. But can anyone stop this Man City dominance, do you think? This Pep dominance?
I mean, I think people are saying it's the Farmers League, maybe... Yeah, they've been very dominant in the last, I think, 6 titles in 7 years, is it? Something like that. But Liverpool have come close, and Arsenal last 2 seasons have come close, especially this season. But Man City getting over the line, you can't really beat them, can you? They've got so much dominance. But I suppose the question is really, with these 115 charges, it's just overshadowing them a little bit. Do you think it takes a bit away from... maybe the romance, maybe the spectacle of winning 4 titles in a row?
I think it only can do that, really, can't it? When you have all that like sort of over your heads, then you're gonna think about that when the final happenings, the final results of the season come. And for me, looking at Man City, you've got De Bruyne, you got Haaland, you got all these players, but you've also got homegrown players like Foden and players like Cole Palmer, who they've developed themselves. But you just look at it and it just seems you always just get that. And I'm not just speaking from a Manchester United standpoint here, but you see that and it just all feels like really manufactured, and it's not organic, But maybe that's just me speaking from a Manchester United standpoint.
I tend to agree. I think until those 115 charges are resolved in some capacity, there's always going to be that thing held above them, isn't there? That's overshadowing maybe their achievements. Yeah. But in terms of Guardiola as a manager and what the players have accomplished, it's hard to take away from them because they've been very good. Like the football on display, it's robotic in many ways. It's like that City often, to me, are either they do feel good to watch, but it feels boring in the sense that like you know what's going to happen because they're that good. Like, so yeah. I mean, against West Ham, was there any doubt that they were going to win? I don't think there was.
I think there was a bit of hope when Koulias kicked out that unbelievable overhead kick. Honestly, that was insane from him. But
Rodri made it 3-1, didn't they?
Rodri just sort of clinched it in the end, and they always felt in control of that game, in my opinion. And they always seem to do this. So it's coming towards that end of the season, like no other side, they seem to just pick up the results again and again and again. Maybe it is that squad depth, maybe it's just that they have that bit more quality than an Arsenal or a Liverpool just at that top end of the pitch, and they just got more quality throughout their squad.
Well, yes, and there was a little bit of hope for us, wasn't there, in the pub when we saw that West Ham made it 3-2, but it turns out Souček punched it into the net. Yeah,
I got a little bit excited with that one, but I look back at it and it looks like,
I saw he celebrate, but you just tell that he knew it wasn't going to stand because he just pushed it into the net, didn't he?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the thing, and in terms of rating Manchester City season, how did you reckon that?
Well, just clarify, we're going to rate each side's season out of 10, 6 being the average. And as for City, I've gone with I think I went with 9.1. I thought
9.1. You're going that specific, are you? I've been going for 0.5s and whole numbers, but I myself would give them an 8. I think it's been a good season for them. An 8, yeah. I mean, if they can wrap up the FA Cup, which they likely will, it's a very good season for them, but it's to be expected at this point. I mean, you're giving them ratings in reference to their expectations, so I would give them an 8. Moving on to West Ham, though. They put on a decent fight, and they've had a bit of a strange season because every time I watch them play, I feel like they're always losing games of football and they're not really playing great football at the same time. But they've finished 9th on 52 points. They've got to a quarter-final of the Europa League. Kudus, who's come in for them, he's scored 18 goals and had 7 assists this season. He's been a revelation for them and scored that wonderful goal, of course. What do you make of the Hammers' season?
Yeah, I think the key men for them have been Kudus, like you say, and Jared Bowen, of course. He's been brilliant again. But yeah, I think they've kind of been in that position where they've been 8th, 9th, 10th for the whole season, haven't they? I think it moves us on to the discussion around Moyes leaving, and I think fans, even though West Ham 9th, I'd say it's a very good position for them. Like, what can the fans expect? But football fans want to see progression, don't they? They want to see something to build towards in the future. And I don't think with Moyes there, they really feel that, like, if you mention Palace now with Glasner, there feels like something to build behind, doesn't there? But with Moyes, it felt like, we're going to get 9th, but the football isn't that good. And I think, the West Ham fans were just yearning for more, despite it being definitely a solid season for them. Yeah,
I think you speak on that, and I think you're definitely correct with David Moyes. I mean, I think he's done a phenomenal job there. Personally,
no doubt about that.
I think there's no doubt about that. But at the same time, the fans do want to see exciting football, especially when you're playing in around that area where, despite West Ham winning trophies, they don't normally win trophies, and what you want to see probably primarily is this football side that's going to take it to the opposition, and maybe West Ham have been more pragmatic, and they've lost Declan Rice and they've lost other players as well, and they've managed to sort of maintain that sort of level that they had, sort of in and around that level that they had last season, and doing quite well in the Europa League, getting put out by the eventual finalists Bayer Leverkusen, who we'll talk about later in terms of the Europa League final.
Well, I'm just looking here. They've only won 4 games in 2024.
Yeah, well, I think that's been it. Like, they had a very strong start to the season, and it looked like they were even maybe going to push top 4, and then they just sort of fell off quite quickly. But in terms of a rating for their season, what would you say?
It's 6 the average. I've said 6 and 6.5 because I think they've been just I think for West Ham, you can expect mid-table 10th, and they've done, they're in Europe as well. But I think 6.5. I think that's fair.
Yeah, no, I think
the West Ham fans would disagree with that thing.
I think they would go a wee bit lower than that, to be fair. I feel like it's been a long sort of 2024 for them so far. I would go 7 myself, I think.
7? Yeah.
Quarter-final of Europa League,
yeah.
9th in the Premier League, you know. I think that's sort of as good as you can hope for. Losing your best player, losing your captain.
Losing Declan Rice.
You know, I think that's probably one of
6.5 is fair. Although I think West Ham would probably say a bit lower, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, we'll move on to Arsenal-Everton. 2-1. Arsenal managed to get a comeback there. So they showed their grit. They showed their determination, but just missed out in the league title, as we said. Havertz scoring another goal in that game. Yeah. He's been quite key for them. That's been quite a good move this season. Where can Arsenal go from here in terms? I mean, you saw in that game they were knocking on the door, but you always got that feeling, even though they got the eventual winner, that if this was Man City, this game probably would have been over before Arsenal.
Probably, yeah, but
you sort of feel like that's the difference between those two sides. What would you say?
Probably, yeah, but they still got the job done, didn't they? And I mean, it's hard to criticise a team that have got 89 points this season. That would have been enough to win you the league on decent amount of Premier League seasons in the past, but obviously this is Pep. I mean, we saw Liverpool get 97 points and not win the league. It's not quite that, is it? But 89 points still very good. But yeah, maybe they're just edging over the line. Like you see sometimes, they've done it very well this season where they'll play really good football, but when they get the lead, they'll just kind of shut it out, kind of go long, which is good. I think they should do that because it's got them results, hasn't it? I do think the Havertz goal was a bit strange because I think there's the handball in there, wasn't there? He knocked it round. I know it wasn't like I don't know if he pushed his hand towards it, but
you mean Gabriel Jesus? Yeah. No, I seen that there, and it was like, but he doesn't really move his arm out from his body, you know. It's like in at his side, and he just goes like that.
I get that.
I guess that's a handball, maybe. I don't know.
I get that, but I think it's just like he's pushed it round the defender, and then they've gone and scored the goal with his arm. It's like, and the fact that the VAR said, "Look at the monitor," and then Michael Oliver does something that you barely ever see, and he went against the decision, didn't he? But it's not important in the overall scheme of their season.
Yeah. How would you? Yeah. How would I rate I would rate theirs at a 7.5 because I feel
7.5.
I feel like they've given a good season. Like I know they haven't won any trophies again, and that's another sort of crux for them. They haven't won any trophies in the last couple of seasons now, even though they were challenging for the league title. But I feel like they've got a lot closer to Man City there. They've sort of kept up the fight until the final day. They've progressed. Have they brought in enough players, enough quality players to sustain the title charge that we saw last season? I would argue not, but I would say a 7.5.
I've gone close to the 8 or 8, just above 8.2 maybe, between 8 and 8.5. Yeah, I think
you can't really say that when I would argue you can't really say that when they haven't won a trophy. If they won a trophy this season, that, yeah. Fair enough.
Maybe if they had a bit better of a cup run as well, or won a cup, or maybe did something more in the Champions League.
Yeah.
And I think you're right about them getting over the line with a trophy, but in the Premier League, it's hard to fault their season. They've lost 5 games, drawn 5, won 28, scored 91 goals, only conceded 29, which is the least in the league.
18 clean sheets as well for the...
Yeah. So defensively, I think they're so good. I think the way they defend their box, Gabriel and Saliba and Ben White, I think...
The way they control games as well, and that's the difference between... That's why we discussed it last week, that's why we've seen sides like City and Arsenal go ahead of Liverpool because they control games, and in the long run that's going to help you out an awful lot more than fighting back from 1 or 2 goals down like Liverpool were doing a lot earlier on in the season. In terms of moving on to Everton though,
yeah.
I don't really know what to think about Everton really anymore. We've discussed it quite a while, the sort of mismanagement of the sides, the sort of recruitment strategies maybe not up to scratch, but how can they improve on this? They move into their new stadium in 2024, I believe. 2025.
So not next season. The season.
Not next season. The season after.
So yeah, they want to be in the league for when they get that stadium, don't they? But yeah, in terms of this season, obviously it's been mainly dominated by that points deduction hanging over them. But I think they've had all things considered, with the circumstances they were in, with FFP and all these like points deduction. I think they've had a very good season. I think Dyche has done a really good job. If they didn't get the points deduction, they would have been 12th. Sorry, they would have been on 48 points, so they would have been 12th, which is a good season, especially when you consider their squad.
Yeah, I think it's been all right. I think go in and around that relegation zone again, but I think maybe my expectations for Everton as a big club are maybe a wee bit higher than they maybe should be.
It depends what you're setting your expectations as. If you're setting your expectations of this season, I think they've had a really good season, because I mean, look at their team. It's not amazing, is it? It's primarily British players, and yeah, I think they've done a good job. As Everton as a club, maybe you're expecting a bit more, but the position they're in at this moment, this season's definitely.
How do they improve on that next season, though?
Well, in terms of the FFP, I've heard they're going to have to like sell some players still, so I think it's going to be more of the same. But obviously they're not going to have.
But long term, it's just staying in the league again.
Staying in the league till they get this new stadium. Keeping Dyche, I think, is important.
Yeah,
I think he's
certainly at this juncture anyway. I think when moving forward, you probably want someone a wee bit more. When you're trying to move up to where you think Everton are.
Yeah, but I think he suits the club. I think he's got that David Moyes kind of thing about him when he was at Everton. I feel like he could stay there quite a while.
How would you rate their season out of 10?
I gave them a 7.
I give them a 6. I initially I'll be honest, I initially give them a 5.5 for getting the points deduction, but the points deduction considered, I give them a 6.5 because finishing 12th, that's probably as high as you expected them to finish, or slightly higher than you expected them to finish. Moving on to Mr. Jurgen Klopp's side, Liverpool, they got the better of your team.
Yeah,
it was a good start for you. Early chance for Pedro Neto, and then you had that red card in 28 minutes for Nelson Semedo. Was that a fair decision?
Yeah, I listened to a few Wolves, I said maybe it's a bit harsh, but it's not an awful decision. Like, you can see why he's given a red card, but kind of fed up with these slow-mos. It wasn't malicious. Like, he's slowing it down. He's gone top, and it wasn't that bad. And I think a yellow wouldn't have been the worst decision in the world either, but obviously it was a red, and that means Semedo missed the first 3 games of next season as well. Semedo's arguably our best player this season. But
he's a good one-on-one defender. I remember
he's really good at one-on-one.
Up against Rashford, he just basically pocketed him.
In terms of the atmosphere, like, it was very good at Anfield. Obviously Klopp's last game, so you expect it, and it didn't feel like they were ever going to lose, did it, when they got all that support? And they got the goal of McAllister.
And then Kwanzaa, that they bundled that one in as well. How do you? Could have been 4 or 5 in there, and you sort of seen that Liverpool sort of that relentless pressure in that game that they've become synonymous with, and we saw the reactions at the end of the game with Trent, Alexander-Arnold. He was in tears, and Virgil van Dijk giving Klopp a big hug, and you could see how much Klopp means to the players and how great his management is in that sphere. How do you assess his time at Liverpool overall, now that it is finished?
Well, one of the best managers I think the Premier League's had, hasn't he? I mean, I think he said in a quote, when in an era where teams were spending big to get success, Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool didn't overspend, did they? They sold to buy in many ways, and they still achieved a lot. So I think that respect has got to be there for him. In many ways, I think he is as good a manager as Pep, because doesn't have the budget to work with that Pep does he? And he still makes it work. You saw that period this season where they had all those young players, and they were still performing each week and winning games, winning the EFL Cup as well. But I think he's definitely a Liverpool legend. Maybe it'd be hard to say their best ever manager, because they have had really good managers back in like the 70s and 60s and whatnot, but up there with one of the best Liverpool managers of all time, and up there with one of the best Premier League managers of all time.
No, I certainly agree with that. They sort of he's made Liverpool Football Club alive again. I think that's the best thing you could say for him, and he's made those fans feel alive again. You could see the ovation afterwards. Arne Slot has been confirmed as his replacement. How do you feel about that in terms of replacing Klopp?
Well, you saw Klopp was basically announced it, didn't he, before it was announced, with the singing to the fans his name. But it'd be an interesting one. I think it's definitely someone they've probably been watching for a while, because it doesn't feel like if you were picking a Liverpool manager right now, you'd go for him, would you? But like, they clearly targeted him as someone that could be good for the club, and I think you just got to trust their opinion. I think he's done a good job. Was it
PS?
Yeah.
V, isn't it? It's just.
Is it final? I thought it was final.
I think you're maybe right, actually.
But yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I mean, he's maybe someone a lot of people don't know about in Europe since he manages in Dutch League. Yeah. But yeah, he did a good job with them. So we'll have to see what he brings to the table in the Premier League.
Well, we'll see how that goes. How do you rate Liverpool's season?
I gave them a 7.8.
7.8.
I think they won a cup. People weren't expecting them to challenge as much as they did, I don't think, this season, with a lot of new midfielders, players coming in. But 82 points, they were challenging for most of the season. I think you can't really. They would have liked more, obviously, more success, maybe in the Europa League as well. But yeah, I think they've had a good season, all things considered.
Yeah, I would give them a 7. Yeah, I think it's been decent. They've won a cup, they've sort of challenged for the league up until a point where they weren't expected to. In terms of Wolves, though, what have you made of that? It's been quite injury sort of stricken season for Wolves, and sort of VAR stricken as well. What have you made of their season? Have they stagnated a wee bit, or do you think they've just sort of maintained a level?
Last 10 games, we've won 1 game. So, and it seemed to capitulate when we got to that FA Cup quarter-final against Coventry. They beat us at home, and since then like I said, we won 1 in 10. But yeah, the season started. We weren't getting results at the start of the season, like the first few games, but we saw in that first game against Man United, that Wolves were playing good football under Gary O'Neill. We sacked our manager like 2 or 3 days before the season start. Gary O'Neill comes in, and yeah, I think he's done a really good job. I think we've done the double over Spurs and Chelsea. And yeah, it has dropped off in the last few weeks, but I think overall it's been a decent season. Definitely more progression than last season.
Losing Jimenez and Neves as well at the start of the season. Yeah,
I mean, Neves, big loss, but I think we've replaced them well, and I think it's only excitement for the future. I think the fear is bringing this bad form at the end of the season to the start of the season. Like that happened under Bruno Lage. We finished 10th, had a decent season, but near the end of the season we were losing every week, and then it carried into the next season until we were bottom at Christmas, and then we had to get Lopetegui in, and he kept us up, obviously. But yeah, like you say, with the VAR, it's hard. I mean, I know you got to be biased to your team a bit, but I think from an objective point of view, you could say Wolves have had a bad go VAR, haven't we?
I would say so. The amount of sort of bad.
I think something like 12 points that people are saying we've missed out on because of decisions that aren't even debatable sometimes. I think, yeah. So it has been tough in that regard for Wolves, and hopefully we get a bit more luck with that next season. But
how do you rate their season out of 10?
I've given us, I think I gave us 6.5 or 6.7 or something like that.
I gave you a 6 actually. I think it's been a decent season for. It's been average. They've sort of maintained the level. They finished 13th level.
14th we finished. Yeah.
No, I know you finished 14th, 13th last season. Yeah. So you sort of maintained a level despite losing one of the promising managers in Europe and some of your best players. So I think overall it's been a decent season. How do you move on from here though?
Yeah, I know we finished 13th last season and 14th this season, but I think this season probably has been a better season than last season because we haven't once flirted with relegation this season. Last season, we were bottom at Christmas. We had to play pragmatic football to get out of it. This season, we played good football. There was a point where we were 2 points off Europe positions. Not even that long ago, but we've just obviously dropped off completely since then. So yeah, going forward, I think it's just a few more squad depth, because Kuna, he has been brilliant this season, but he had injuries as well. Neto had 9 assists for us, but he only played 20 games. So yeah, but Kuna's been our best player, I think. Him and Semedo. But yeah, just a few more squad depth, so we got more options.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that was Liverpool Wolves. Moves us on to the bottom of the table. Sheffield lost 3-0 to Spurs, which has ended a very sorry season for them, with Chris Wilder's men finishing on 16 points and Spurs securing Europa League football and 5th place. In terms of looking briefly at those two sides, Sheffield, what's gone so wrong for them, and how would you rate their season?
It's bad, isn't it? Let's be honest, you can't sugarcoat it. I'm just going to get my rating out the way. I'm just going to say I give them a 3. I think that might be generous as well.
Yeah. No, actually, I do concur with you there. That's a 3.
I think because no one expected them to stay up, but I think people maybe had more expectation over them than Burnley. Sorry, not Burnley, Luton, and obviously they've done a better job, but 104 goals conceded, a record amount of goals conceded in the Premier League campaign.
Isn't that much?
Yeah. 35 goals scored, 104 conceded, which is the record for amount of goals conceded, and only 16 points, which is quite low as well.
That is very bad. Do you think they can bounce back next season, or do you think they need a couple of seasons in the Championship, maybe build up their squad a wee bit?
I think they're probably well placed to give it another good go in the Championship.
Yeah, would you think it would be why? Well, obviously you want to get promoted, of course you do, but do you think they need a bit more do they need to be more prepared next season? Because I feel like you say it's a 3 for finishing on 16 points, and that's very fair, but at the same time, look at their squad. I mean, it's not really Premier League standard, really. It's not really standard of other sides. It's very much sort of Luton and around Luton. Luton have done a lot better than they have, to be fair. But yeah. In terms of Spurs, though, what have you made of Spurs? I mean, obviously we've got a lot of Spurs fans who listen and support the show, and
we appreciate that.
We do appreciate that, and we were spending a good time with one of those fans. Shout out Mark Baston. That's number 3. Shout out for you, Mark. I know you were listening there with
and Lottie Baston as well.
And Lottie Baston, yeah, she's back home. That's a friend of ours, and Mark. Shout out. Hope Otto's listening as well. But anyway, moving on. What have you made of Spurs this season?
I think it's been solid. I think it's been good. I think the main thing I've learned from this season is I love Big Ange. I think he's a really good manager. I think he's got an elite mentality. I think in interviews he speaks so well. He's got a certain way of playing that he doesn't change. But I think that's what you need at a big club. If you want to achieve the best things, you've got to have that kind of high aim, a set way of playing, which Spurs definitely do. And yeah, they could have done better in certain parts of the season, but I think overall it's been a solid season. They were top in October, weren't they? So yeah, I think it's been a good season for Spurs.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that. I don't think there was huge expectations coming into it. I mean, I was speaking to
losing Kane.
I was speaking to Spurs fans before the season, and they honestly all saying the sort of similar thing where, you've lost Kane, you've got a new manager coming in. You've seen their season last year, and I mean, it was very, very poor, sort of throughout, and they didn't get European football, they didn't get this, that, or the other, and I think that they sort of, to get 5th place in the season has been quite a good result for them. I think they can build from that, especially with Ange. I think he's been a revelation for them. More so his personality than anything else. He seems like a really, really good bloke, and he also seems like he's got that mentality. I mean, you've seen him shouting. There was rumours that he was shouting at or it seemed to be a video that appeared to show him shouting at a fan who celebrated City's goal, because obviously Spurs fans wanted Arsenal to lose out on the league title.
I think that with that City Spurs game, I think he handled that perfectly, because I thought I'm not going to say it's poor from the Spurs fans, because it's expected. You don't want your rivals to win the league but I think he was disappointed in that, wasn't he? He wanted that elite mentality where they're aiming to win every game, and you can only respect that, really.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you rate their season out of 10?
I've given them a 7. I think it's a good season. I think good progression. Lost Kane, didn't really replace him directly, did they? Mm-hmm. They obviously brought in good signings, Maddison, Van der Ven. But I suppose Brennan Johnson as well.
But brought in a lot of decent players.
Yeah, but didn't bring in that superstar, I suppose. But yeah, I think it's been a good season. I think next season, so a 7. I think next season they'll aim for that 4th position, just try and get over the line past Villa. But yeah, what have you given?
Yeah, well, I think that with that increased quality, they can certainly sort of attempt to do that. It's going to be more competitive next season, I reckon. But I would give them a 7 as well. Yeah. But moving on, Luton ended their season. They got relegated. A 4-2 defeat to Fulham. It's been a promising season for Luton. I mean, let's not forget this is their first season in the Premier League, and they've had a lot of decent players. We've seen Ross Barkley's been very good there. We've seen Carlton Morris, who has 11 Premier League goals this season for them, and they've put in a lot of good spirited performances. And I think when you look at their squads, that's the best you can really expect for, because it's not, as I say, it's on that Sheffield sort of standard where it's probably a championship side.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think Barkley was a great signing for them. Free transfer. Yeah. I thought he's been really good this season. But I think they've overperformed all expectations. They're very close to staying up, really. Yeah. They had that good form, didn't they? I think around Christmas, January, February time. Yeah. But then after that, it felt like they could push on, but they couldn't get those extra few wins that they really needed.
I've given them a 6.5 because I'm not sure I can quite give a team that's been relegated a 7, because I feel like that's maybe on slightly.
I'll give them a 7. Yeah, I think in terms of expectation, everyone thought they finished dead bottom. They're probably one of the poorest teams that ever made it in the Premier League, aren't they? So
on paper, yes, but not. And on the actual
on paper, I mean,
to which we play the beautiful game. Fulham, what have you made their season? They've been sort of up and down. They finished they finished 10th last season. They finished 13th this season. Showed their superior quality in that game and have showed little bursts of quality throughout the season. But what have you made their season? Has it been sort of mediocre, average? I know they've dropped a couple of places down.
Average, I'd say. I think more of the same from Fulham. I think they've had good moments in the season. They've had worse. They've had bad moments, but I think overall it's been good. I think I've picked out a few key men for them. I think Muniz, he's got 9 goals. I think he's been good. Raheem Jimenez also made a bit of a comeback with 7 goals. And and Anthony Robertson as well, their left back, who's been really good. He's in the top 1% of players in the league for interceptions, and he's also got 6 assists. So I think he's been very, very good this season. And players like Polinia and Andreas Pereira have also put in solid seasons again. So I've given him. What did I give him? I've given him a 6. Yeah,
I've given them a 5.5, slightly below average because they finished higher last season and they brought in Raul Jimenez, so I sort of expected them to maintain that. But I think it's been a decent season.
Raul Jimenez, there's no expectation of him though, was there?
No, but he's still a good striker, James, in my opinion. But I would give them a 5.5. Moving on, Brighton and my lot, Manchester United. Man United managed to finish their season on a win. You got Dalot and Højlund scoring those 2 goals, who have been really 2 standout performers for the Reds this season. Højlund, I just want to give you a stat here. Højlund has only taken 38 shots in the Premier League, and I thought that sort of stat is synonymous with his that's 1 shot per game for a striker from Manchester United. I know he probably hasn't played all those games, but
how many goals did he score?
10 goals. He's got a decent conversion rate. I actually think he's got a better conversion rate than Haaland, who scored 27 from 121 shots, whereas Højlund scored 10 from 38 shots. So he's got a slightly better goal conversion rate. Do you think that's sort of synonymous with United's struggle to sort of put together, all the best sides in the world? They always have that number 9, or they always have that that player where, you know, if you provide them with the chances, they will score the goals, and that will give you the success. You've seen that with Arsenal, you've seen that with Man City, and with most sides that have had success this season. What have you made of United's season? It's been their worst in Premier League history.
Yeah.
What have you made of it?
So yeah, it's been terrible, hasn't it, really?
Finished 8th place.
Finished 8th place.
Outside Europe.
No Europe. Yeah, worst points tally of all time. But in terms of Højlund, I think he's been a pretty good signing, in all things considered. I mean, he's not the finished package by any means, but maybe it's the service he's kind of lacking to him from the wings. Rashford, for me, he's really had a poor season. Bruno Fernandes, good player as well, I think. He's had an okay season.
Yeah, I think he's he's stood up and he's been counted this season in many ways, and he's sort of someone that you definitely want to hold on to if you're going to sort of rise up the league table.
But I think...
What, do you stick with Ten Hag or do you go elsewhere?
Well, I was just going to touch on your midfield. I think your midfield's been quite poor, with like Mount been really poor this season.
That's been the weak area.
And Casemiro as well had a really poor season. But yeah, in terms of Ten Hag, I think personally, it's time to move on. I don't know, because it's a difficult one, because Man United have had a few managers now, haven't they, where it's not working. But yeah, I personally would get rid of him. I don't know who I'd get in, but yeah, what do you think? You'd stick with him?
I've said this many times. I'd stick with the man still. I think that he's shown something in the last 2 years, and that is he's not afraid to make decisions. I think a lot of good managers have that. It's hard to say because he's made so many mistakes this season, but I say it time and time again. He's a problem. He has been a problem this season, Ten Hag, but there are a range of problems, and there's a range of problems that are a lot more pertinent to Manchester United's improvement that need to be made.
It feels like more than any club in England or even in Europe that Man United's like a massive soap opera. There's always some kind of debate with the Sancho thing. You know, obviously it was the season before with Ronaldo. It's always the manager's kind of got to be this figure that has to deal with everything. You think he's dealt with those kind of things quite well, do you think?
I'm not saying he's dealt with them quite well.
Dealt with the Sancho thing
I don't think he's dealt with things that well, in terms of, you know, he's got his own way, but he's not been afraid to make decisions, and he's been bold, and in many ways I respect that quality in him. And I feel like I don't really know. I just keep harking back to, you can change the manager to whoever you want. You can change it to Pep Guardiola for all I care, but I don't think any manager is going to achieve what Manchester United's expectation is, and that is to go deep into Europe, and I mean the Champions League, and win the Premier League title, or challenge the Premier League title. That is the Manchester United expectation, and to win a trophy every single season. That's their expectation. I don't think many managers in the world can do that with Manchester United, because the structure, the infrastructure, the recruitment, everything, the stadium, we saw it leaking against Arsenal. I mean, come on. I don't think until we get those issues sorted, you can fully judge a manager. I get it. And if you want to sack Ten Hag and move on with someone else, if Radcliffe wants to do that and he doesn't see him as part of his vision, I think he's got reason to sack him, but I personally wouldn't. I think,
Radcliffe, you think he may want to put his own stamp on the club, get a new manager in.
Oh, he's on thin ice, absolutely, and I think if he loses that FA Cup final...
Depending on how he loses it as well. If you get battered in that FA Cup final... 4 or 5-0. It's hard to.
It honestly might be the last dance for Ten Hag if
he wins this FA Cup, then maybe it's a different story, isn't it? But
well, I mean, it's going to be a difficult one.
I think it's hard to say whether to sack him or not before that game.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't sack him before then. I think you've obviously stuck with him this long. I think you go for it. The FA Cup final. What rating would you give them?
3.5 I've given them.
I've given them, and this may be just me just feeling it a wee bit more, but I've given them a 2.5.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's the worst season.
It's my lowest rating. But talking about Brighton, they finished 5 places lower than they did last season. Obviously, they've had the Europa League, which they made the round of 16 in before being put out by the semi-finalists Roma. Zerbi's left. Who knows? Might even go to their final day counterparts, Manchester United. We don't know. We'll see, I guess. But what have you made of their season? Do you think their purple patch has ended in the last couple of seasons where they've been doing really well, or do you think this is just bound to happen with them having European commitments?
I've given them a 6 just because I think it's been an average season for them. I think it's been decent. They obviously had to deal with Europa League as well, didn't they? That they haven't had to deal with before. So I think they started the season quite well, didn't they? They were more up in that 7th, 8th position. They've slowly dropped off a little bit. And maybe De Zerbi's kind of taken them as far as he can. Yeah. At this very moment with their budget, and he's probably looking elsewhere and thinking, I want to move on. Because maybe another season like this with Brighton, his stock would be a bit lower. Another 11th place finish maybe. But I think he's achieved all he can with Brighton. I understand why maybe it's time to move on from there.
I give them a 6.5. Slightly above average, but I think they've had a not too bad season. They sort of just maintain sort of a mid-table level, which is something that you probably expect of a side with their resources, even though the quality of their resources is amazing. They financially, they maybe can't afford as much.
Their recruitment is second to none, really, isn't it?
But that was them there. That moves us on to Brentford, Newcastle. Newcastle securing that 7th place and the Conference League spot. Warding off a spirited fight back from Brentford, who have showed bits and pieces this season. Amazing seasons for Anthony Gordon, 23 goal involvements, and Alexander Isak with his 27 goal involvements, including 25 goals. How would you assess the season for Newcastle, where they've had the Champions League commitments, but they've managed to maintain sort of a European place? Do you think it's been a good season for them?
I think it's been another good season. While it's not hit the heights of last season, I think it's still been a solid season for Newcastle. I think Eddie Howe can be relatively happy with the season. I've given them a 7. I think they've done a decent job. I think if they got UCL again, maybe that would have been like an 8 or something this season, but because that's probably what it was last season. No one expected them to get Champions League.
9 last season.
Yeah, probably.
In the Carabao Cup final as well. Yeah. No, I would give them a 7. I think they're in a good place. I think they've just got that problem where they've got these new owners. All the eyes are on them. I think I've seen fellow football commentators, True Geordie, you big YouTubers like that, they've been saying how it's not really fair how Man City can spend all that money, and then Newcastle have sort of had to sort of limit themselves. And I feel like you see that if they've had to limit themselves, they had to recruit sort of players like Dan Burn, who are slightly better than what they had before, but still not that level of Champions League quality. Despite his many slide tackles on PSG players at St James's Park earlier on in the season. But I think it's been a decent season for them. I'd give them a 7. In terms of Brentford, though, it's been a bit of a disappointing one after finishing 9th last year. Has it sort of been down to Ivan Toney's absence and the lack of signings, or do you think it's just they were bound to sort of succumb to the level where you'd expect them to be? I
think they've had a solid season. I don't think we've learnt much about them. I don't think we've learnt anything more about what they've got or what they can do, but I think Wissa, he's got 12 goals and 3 assists. I think he's stepped in well for Tony in the absence of the...
I disagree that it's been a solid season for them. I don't think it has, because I think they have genuine Premier League quality, and I expected them to finish at least 3 places higher than they did, despite the absence of Ivan Toney, personally. And they had that Kevin Shada. They've brought in Kevin Shada as well, so they have brought in players, so I sort of expected more from them. I've given them a 5 because they feel like they've performed below their means personally. But you disagree?
I think it's just been an average season. I've given them a 6. I think I could maybe drop that to a 5.5, but I think they've stayed in the league. They maybe haven't progressed like they want, but they had Tony missing for their best player by far for like most of the season. And Mbeumo, can they hold on to him? I think he's been a really good player in Mbeumo.
Always been fantastic.
And I've seen talk that maybe he could move on. Same with Tony. I think they probably will lose Tony in the summer. I'm not sure.
Do you think for next season that's maybe a relegation battle for them?
Depends how they spend that money, isn't it? I think if they lost Tony and Mbeumo, that would be tough for them.
No,
but
it would be very tough.
Like Brighton, they're very good at recruitment, aren't they? So
yeah, well, I suppose we'll see. Moving on though, to Crystal Palace, and who battered Aston Villa, who Champions League Aston Villa, all the same. 5-0 with a ruthless and slick attacking display. James saw my notes beforehand, so he knew that I had that those little words to describe their performance. Mateta, Eze, Elise have been superb in the second half of the season.
Is like, let me think about it. It's
superb.
Eze, Elise, and Mateta. It's like MSN, isn't it? Really, like they're absolute.
I wouldn't go that far. Maybe the South London version.
Honestly, though, at the end of the season, they are filthy players. Like Mateta with his tucked-in shirt is like
he's been super.
He's like prime Drogba.
Wow, that's
16 goals this season from Mateta.
That's it. 16 goals in the Premiership. I think Elise and Eze have really stepped up as well. Sort of younger players, sort of maturing. Particularly Eze, I mean, he's superb to watch, and he's put himself in that England side alongside Adam Wharton, who's had a very impressive season.
Yeah, he's also got into that 33-man squad.
How do you rate their season? Overall, 10th place.
I've given a 7, but that's mainly based on their second half of the season.
They were struggling for a while there, and I think Elise and they had Eze coming back from injury, and Mateta just sort of came into form, and loose stuff came together for them. In terms of next season, though, and that's what we're all looking forward to next season. Can they hold on to these players? You've seen Mateta, he's been linked with PSG. Elise has been linked with United. I think Eze, you said he signed a contract extension, didn't he?
I think the main thing at the moment is obviously those players as well, but hanging on to Glasner, who I've got a few stats about when he came in. On his first match was on the 24th of February, and since then he's played 13 matches. Palace have won 7, drawn 3, and just lost 3. He scored over 3 goals on 5 separate occasions, as well as notable wins against Liverpool and United. 4-0 win against United as well.
There we go.
And compared to Hodgson, who managed the first 24 of the season with just 6 wins, 4 draws and 12 losses.
Yeah, he's been a better fit for them. He sort of allowed them to play a more expansive, just basically allowed those just incredibly talented players like Eze and Elise to have that freedom to roam and do what they do best, which is just tear up on a football pitch. Aston Villa, though, bit of a disappointing end to an otherwise very good season.
Mate, they're in a B4 already, wouldn't they?
they were a little bit absent on the last day, but they returned to the Champions League for first time since 1982-83, which is the season after they won the competition.
41 years.
Really impressive season. Watkins, 40 goal involvements in all competitions this season. He has cemented his place in that England side. Semi-finals of the Conference League as well. Yeah. What have you made of their season? I've given them an 8 personally. I think it's been a superb season. What about you?
I've given them a 9.
9?
I don't think you can.
I think that's fair.
How can you get better from that position?
Yeah.
4th place.
I think that is probably more fair. I think I initially had them at an 8.5, but I sort of thought, well, maybe with their quality they could have won the Conference League, but
that was the only thing, wasn't it? That maybe they could have done a bit better against Olympiacos. But I think their key men have been Pau Torres. I think he's been very good at the back. I think
from Villarreal in the summer. Emery brought him with him. Well, not really, but eventually followed him.
Obviously Watkins, 32 goal contributions in the Premier League, and the goalie Emi Martinez been very solid again this season. So
there we go.
But loads of players have been good for Villa.
How do you think they handle the Champions League?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I'm not sure what their FFP financial state is, because they've obviously
keep an eye on that.
They obviously have.
Sides have been done for it.
Yeah, they obviously have spent a decent amount of money last season and recently, but with that getting in the Champions League, that must give them a bit of money to go on and spend. Maybe they'll have to sell. I think that they've probably got a few players they could sell. Really, maybe to step up to the next level.
Well, I think it's just all about that progression into that next level. For them, but they've done.
In terms of the league, though, I think, with them battling the Champions League as well, I know obviously they were in Europe this time, but it's a bit easier in the Conference League. I think if they can try and withstand where they are in the league, that that would be even better than this season, wouldn't it? Coming fourth and hopefully having a good run in the Champions League.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know a few Villa fans and they're absolutely buzzing with the
I'm sure they are.
state of the club at the moment.
Yeah, they're financially well backed as well, so that should, and with the Champions League money, that's going to be superb for them. They're certainly going to hold on to Ollie Watkins. I think he's definitely going to stay there. Definitely should stay there, in my opinion. Moving on, sort of lower down the table, we have Burnley 1 and Nottingham Forest 2. Forest getting the win on the final day, securing their safety after that's 4 points deduction, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Just checking. What have you made of Forest season? They sort of teetered with relegation as well, or sort of flirted with relegation. What have you made of their season?
I think it's been pretty poor. I think. Yeah, I don't know what Forest's expectations are, but obviously they've spent a lot of money in recent years. So if they did go down, I feel like it could have been quite a disaster for them financially, couldn't it? Obviously they got that points deduction for that very reason, but yeah, I think Gibbs White's a good player. He's been quite good for them. Yeah, I think I've given him a 4.5. I think it's not.
I've given him a 5. Yeah, I think it's been around sort of below average. Maybe should have done slightly better, sort of more mid-table direction with the quality they do have. Gibbs White, 16 goal involvements. He's been very key for their survival, and I think you could probably see him moving on at some stage if he doesn't get. The squad doesn't improve.
I haven't watched them much this season, but I did watch their game against Man City, and they were quite a frustrating team to watch. They were getting the ball in the right areas, but it wasn't quite happening.
Yeah, they've had that problem with sort of end product. They've had that in
Odoi was
2
kind
seasons.
Part of that problem, I think, as well.
How do you see them? In terms of their financial situation, you've seen that points deduction and the sort of recruitment strategy. How do they sort that out? Do they just need to get someone in with a wee bit more expertise?
I don't know the exact. I think if you're getting a 4-point deduction, I don't know their exact financial state for next season, but can't imagine they'll be spending much money. I feel like they'll have to sell somewhere, won't they?
Well, they might just have to sell a couple of the more sort of prized assets. You saw them sell Brennan Johnson, who was a key player for them, so they might have to do a wee bit more of that.
I think they could be favourites to go back down next season, couldn't they?
Could be. It depends as to say how they buy and sell and how they sort of spend within their means and try not to get another points deduction. That would be quite key, to be fair. I think they weren't really in that relegation battle, but then they were sort of dragged. Well, they were in it, but they weren't as perilously in it before that points deduction. But that was. Moving on to Burnley, though, they high expectations for them, myself included. Maybe I got caught up in the hype train of Vincent Kompany and this sensational season, and he had dominating the championship last season. What does this mean for them? Just getting relegated. They were in a relegation fight, but they sort of weren't. They sort of looked destined to get relegated throughout the season. What have you made of their season?
Finished on 24 points, 2 points behind Luton. 78
goals conceded. Which is not as much as their Sheffield counterparts, but still quite a lot.
Great. I mean, also they conceded. They only scored 41, which Luton got 52. So obviously they found it quite easy to score. But I think it's been quite poor. I think out of the 3 promoted sides, Burnley were the ones that people want to watch, weren't they? They were I saw people in their predictions putting them as high as 13th and 12th.
Yeah, I think I put them in around there because I just got caught up in the hype train, get caught up in the great football they played. But I think they've just sort of come in and they haven't really. I think they've stuck to their guns, fair play, but I mean at the same time you got to be pragmatic in many ways as a newly promoted side, especially as a newly promoted side without the Premier League experience. That they lack Premier League experience in that squad, really, don't they? And maybe obvious quality that you would need to stay up that perhaps Forest maybe have a wee bit more of. So where do you see this? Do you think they'll bounce back up, or do you think?
Depends if Kompany stays. I think that's quite a key thing. I think if they do come back up, like you say, unless they get different players, then they're going to have to kind of change the way they're playing a bit. I think it's maybe best if Kompany leaves for them, because it's hard to say, isn't it? Because it's hard for them with those players to really get playing. I think maybe they'd have to just give it another go and see if they could bounce back again, and see if Kompany can do it better this time. But recent days we've seen company linked with Bayern Munich. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, it's a strange one after getting relegated, to be honest.
Which I think is a bit of a mad one. I think
it is a wee bit strange.
I mean, every manager is rejecting Bayern Munich at the moment. But yeah,
Pochettino maybe going there. Potentially, is that what that's all about? Who knows?
To Burnley.
Well, I'm take him at Burnley. To be fair, I'm not sure he would take them though.
What's your rating for Burnley?
Give them a 5. I think.
That's what I've gone for as well. Yeah, 5.
Below average, certainly. Moving on to Chelsea, Bournemouth though. Chelsea managed to get that Europa League spot. They sort of have put together a string of results, and maybe it's just the lack of quality around them, sort of given Manchester United's and Newcastle's sort of struggles this season, but they've managed to secure that Europa League spot. Goal of the season contender from Moises Caicedo. Oh my word, that was a absolute thunder blaster. That
hasn't scored all season, has it?
It's insane. But very impressive season for Cole Palmer, who's really sort of dragged them kicking and screaming into those Europa League spots. He's got 33 goal involvements in the Premier League this season. Now, I have been told that 12 of those are penalties, but all the same, that's incredibly impressive numbers, James, isn't it?
Yeah, 22 goals in the Prem as well, 9 of those are penalties and 11 assists as well. But you watch him play, he's the best player for Chelsea, isn't he?
By a mile.
He takes on the responsibility well.
Yeah, you can see he's a Manchester City player.
Yeah.
That's the biggest compliment I could pay to him. It's like the compliment I paid to Kobe Mainoo when I say he looks like a Manchester City player. That's the biggest compliment I could pay
just
to him.
Looks comfortable
on the ball.
Class,
just so effortlessly good, and he's really dragged them into those European spots.
Yeah, I mean,
well, how'd you rate their season?
Well, I was just going to say the last 19 games, so the second half of the season, they were 4th in the table in terms of the last 19, which shows there was a real difference in the performances in the second half of the season. And it's strange, isn't it? Because they seemed like they were going in the right direction, and now they've sacked Pochettino.
Yeah, that's a bit of a strange one. How would you rate their season? I've given them a 5 point.
I've given them a 5.8, so maybe if you want to round it up to 6. I
would give them a 7. I think they performed.
7?
Yeah, because I think coming in, Pochettino, like there's a lot of different stuff going on around Chelsea. You know, I don't think the expectations were top 4 for them, in my opinion, because I don't think they have a settled structure to get top 4 like Aston Villa do. So I think a 7 was. I think his Poch has done a decent job overall. You know, he's made that Carabao Cup final, even though they lost out. But yeah, you talk about the Poch exit. Where do they go from here? Who do they go to? Do they go back to Tommy T there? Thomas Tuchel? What do you reckon?
I don't know. I don't know why they've sacked him, to be honest. It must be something. I think we were talking with you and Johns with this. He thinks it's something to do with.
It's one of our friends, by the way.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe the transfer decisions. Like Poch wouldn't have any say over who they sign. But come on, Bowley. But if we're giving Todd Bowley the decisions, he doesn't know anything about football, does he? I think you've got to back Pochettino. I think he's done a really good job in this second half of the season.
It just seems a lot of chaos going around there, to be honest. And you know, who knows what's going on.
Chelsea, they just sat managers here and there, don't they? That wouldn't happen at many other clubs, would it? I don't think, even getting sacked in that position. But yeah.
How would you rate it? Oh yes, 5.8, of course.
5.8. Yeah.
Yeah,
because
I don't know where they're going to go from there.
I say you got to remember. You say you give them 7, but you got to remember they spent a lot of money. I know it was on Mudryk, 100 million, Caicedo. These are really expensive players. I think people did expect them to be at least 6th. So I'd say it's just like an average season for them. That's
fair. In terms of Bournemouth, so they've finished on their best ever points tally. Finished 12th. Yeah. Their new manager Andoni Iraola.
Bloody hell.
Iraola.
That makes
from Rayo Vallecano, who got them promoted. He's come in this season. Not very big expectations for Bournemouth this season after losing Gary O'Neill, who was so important for them. But they've really been superb, and Dominic Solanke has been the head of that with 19 goals and 3 assists in the Premier League. What have you made of their season?
I think it's been a very good season for them. They finished 12th. I think at the start of the season it looked like they could be in trouble, wasn't it? They weren't really getting any wins under Iraola, but he's come good. They've trusted him, and people question than maybe when they sacked Gary O'Neill, because he's done a decent job. But Iraola's come in and he's done a very good job. I think it's been a solid season. I've given him, what have I given him? I've given him 7. I thought they've been good. Yeah.
Solid, yeah. No, I'd actually give them a 9, to be honest. Honestly. Honestly, were you expecting like their best ever points tally?
Is this their best points?
League is their best points tally. I'll not tell you what their best points tally is, because that might be a question for later on in the show. But yeah, no, their best ever points tally.
Wow.
No. You look at their squad. It's not, not many established Premier League players in there of obvious quality, and I think they've just turned up and they've performed well beyond their means, in my opinion. But
maybe 7's a bit harsh for me then.
Maybe somewhere in the middle,
like maybe 8 or something like
that. But yeah, well, that was our roundup on game week 38 of the Premier League season, and our roundup on all the Premier League sides and their seasons.
I was just going to say, I did just find something on my phone which we could quickly do. I found something from August where I made a Premier League prediction, so I don't know if we want to just quickly review how I did. Read it out. Yeah, so let me go to it a sec.
Yeah, just coming up on the show though, we have the team of the season, and we've got the player of the season, surprise of the season, manager of the season, signing of the season, disappointment of the season, best young player, favourite game and favourite moment, and then our 10-question quiz coming up.
Right, so yeah, I found my Premier League prediction made on the 9th of August, so that was 3 days before the season started. Yeah, so if I start from the bottom, 20th, I went with Sheffield, so bang on there. Then 19th, Luton, so 1 place out. And this maybe backs up your Bournemouth shout. Bournemouth, I went with 18th.
I know, I predicted them to be in and around that relegation zone. So.
Yeah, Everton, I went with 17th, which I suppose isn't too far off, but obviously they had the points prediction that I didn't see. Burnley, I went with 16th, so I had them staying up, obviously. Not Wolves, I went with 15th. We finished 14th. Then I went with Forest 14th. They finished 17th. Palace 13th. West Ham, I went 12th, so that shows. I think 9th was a good season for them. Why have I put Palace twice? I've put Palace twice. Who have I missed out? I have no idea who I've missed out. But anyway, 10th I went Brentford. So that was yeah.
Okay, well that backs up my point then.
Oh yeah, 9th I went Brighton. 8th I went Spurs. 8th Spurs, but jeez, that's a poor prediction from me. Yeah, 7th Newcastle, bang on. 6th Villa. 5th I went Chelsea. 4th Liverpool. 3rd Man United. So 2nd Arsenal, 1st City. So top 2.
Yeah, United predictions a wee bit off, but I suppose we sort of all thought United were going to do better than they did.
Oh, I think I missed out Fulham. Yeah. So I've either 11th or 13th would be Fulham.
That's in the right place. Yeah. Well, that's not bad predictions, terrible, but also
Spurs 8th was a bit ropey,
and United 3rd was also a wee bit ropey. Yeah. But anyway,
and the Bournemouth shout.
Well, yeah, that was interesting to say the least.